Mike Bates, a real-life James Bond who rode an ocean. UNIFY men. Firstly, I'd like to thank my friend and podcast sponsor, Sean Sargent of State for Men, for making this amazing episode happen. This week, I had the honor of speaking with Mike Bates, former Ministry of Defense Covert Operations leader, Commando and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, turned solo ocean rower, community builder, and entrepreneur. There's no one in the world with Mike's experience. Mike brings exceptional credibility. He served 2 decades in the UK's Royal Marines and the Ministry of Defence, rising to become a human intelligence specialist and covert counter-terrorism operations leader. Isn't that a mouthful? AKA James Bond, and leading other Bond teams. He was the first officer in the MOD to pass all the required frontline counter-terror courses. Following on from that elite career, he turned ultra-endurance athlete, completing the 3,000-mile solo row across the Atlantic in just 46 days, 6 hours, and 10 minutes, the fastest Briton and first solo finisher of the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge. He now co-founds and leads the mission-driven community UNIFY Men and its predecessor, brand Next 45, focused on men's health, connection, and transformation. His core insight is powerful. The ultimate act of courage for a man is vulnerability. Strength isn't proven by suppressing emotion. It's shown in connection, authenticity, and the bravery to face one's own trauma. Mike's lived experience in covert ops, ultra-endurance rowing, and men's transformation underpins that insight. Through immersing men in nature, building safe circles, practicing martial arts like BJJ, and emphasizing fundamentals such as sleep, relinquishing ego, he provides a roadmap for modern masculinity. Today, Mike's work with UNIFY Men gives fathers and men a tribe, creates spaces where men can share truth without shame, and champions that the smartest fight is the one you walk away from. He emphasizes prioritize sleep, step outside into nature, get comfortable with vulnerability, de-escalate ego, and start telling the truth about what you feel. The bottom line, this isn't another tough guy message. It's a call to men to live longer, love deeper, and lead better. Mike shows that real power comes when a man stops pretending and starts connecting. Today, Mike is a man on a mission to help others to become the best version of themselves. Drawing on his own unique, remarkable experiences, he inspires and empowers others to live life without limits. You can connect with Mike on the links below. Check him out on Instagram at Mike Bates Official. His website, mikebates.uk, and UNIFY Men, of course, check that out at unifymen.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert, and the How Not to Die guy. And you're listening to my podcast, Straight Talk Mind and Muscle. This episode is proudly sponsored by these guys, State and State for Women, because aging is inevitable, but how we age is a choice. State is the ultimate daily formula for optimal health and longevity, backed by clinically proven 100% natural ingredients that's designed to support hormone health, stress resilience, energy, and performance. And I use it every single day. And a special thanks also to my new sponsor, Michael Mason and the Mason Survival Protocol. Links to both of these are in the show notes below. Catch all my past episodes and resources in the notes as well. Thanks for watching. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest this evening. I'm staying up late. Mike Bates, UNIFY Men. Thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure, mate. Great to meet you, man. Great to be here.
Always nice to have a quick informal chat before we hit record, and it doesn't really change much after we've hit the button. Really excited to have you on because of what you do. And as usual, I don't like to really introduce a guest. I like to get them to explain what they do without tooting their own horn, because I'll do that enough for you. But what do you do? And then we're going to lean into what is UNIFY Men about? Because it's a big thing. I did do a bit of research, and I love what you're doing. So let's explain that for the listeners and the viewers.
Thanks, mate. Well, UNIFY is one of the things that I do, and I co-founded it with a good friend of mine recently. But I do a lot of things. So I have a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy. I'm a public speaker, travel around the world, sharing my stories, you know. But UNIFY is the kind of the passion project. It's the mission-driven thing. It's the thing that gets me out of bed every morning, mate, because when I hit 40 years old, you'll be the same, particularly the kind of career that we've shared. Your identity is wrapped up with this individual. And when you leave and you hit midlife, you're looking around and you're thinking, man, what's my next 45 going to be? And so I started to see that if I felt that way, and I feel like I'm a guy who can go make things happen, right? And I'm sure you are as well. That's why we did what we did. What about the guy in the street who perhaps doesn't feel like they're able to do that? And so what I wanted to do alongside Joe, my business partner, is create a community, create a space, initially for men in midlife to see the next 45 years as something that can be better than the first. When they understand that actually the greatest currency in life isn't the position you hold in a company or the kind of car you drive or how big your house is. It's how much you love and the friendships you have and your health and all those things. So I wanted to start a community around that. And then we broadened that out more recently to include things like fatherhood. And we're now having events where we get dads to bring along their kids and together they share amazing experiences in nature. And it's an amazing thing to do, man. Great thing to be a part of.
I'm quite stunned at that, Mike, and I don't mean that lightly. I don't say that lightly at all. I'm quite stunned that you're going out of your way, literally passion projects, that's what we do, to help others that you don't know, that aren't in the forces or maybe the backgrounds that we've come from. You've looked at perspective. And Andrew Bustamante, the ex-CIA guy, I'm looking at getting him on the show. He talks about that a lot, looking at things from somebody else's perspective rather than your perception of it. You said there, what if someone else is feeling like that and they haven't been through what we've been through? That's really interesting. But what's not uncommon about my guests, Mike, is, and even the Sergeant Major of the Army, Whittemere Moffat, all of them say they're there to help others, which is crazy when people think of special forces guys or rough army guys. The Sergeant Major of the Army was supposed to be a big, tough guy. We're there to help others, and that's truly what we're doing. So thank you for clarifying it. I'm going to go into your journey in the second half, I think, your personal stuff. You said, jiu-jitsu and the other things you're doing. Before I do that, I'd like to thank a couple people, and then I'm going to go into more about UNIFY Men. Just want to give a big shout out to Sean Sargent from State for Men, which I don't get to do very often. He connected me with you, and it's a phenomenal thing he's doing, supporting the show to get us together. So shout out to Sean, he's brilliant. You were mentioning Joe before, your business partner in UNIFY Men. I'm assuming that's Joe Gaunt as well?
That's right, mate, yeah.
Looking at bringing him on the show. Why? This is a loaded question, and I'm not an interviewer sort of guy, but why do men need unifying?
I think, well, the first thing I would say, mate, to your point before about helping others, I do believe that what I'm trying to do, whether it's in jiu-jitsu and creating communities there, whether it's UNIFY, whether it's speaking on stage, or whether it's serving my country for half my entire life, these are all acts of service. Yes. My North Star, my true north is, to live a life where I can be proud that I've helped other people and I've served others. So that's the first thing I would say. But why do you think men need UNIFY? I think men struggle to find the courage to be open and vulnerable about how they really feel. And so if they can see men who've perhaps the archetypal special forces or, covert operations leader guy like me is a tough guy, like you said before. If they can see those type of men being open and vulnerable and surrendering almost to how they feel, I think it gives them the courage too. So I'm just open to lead in that space, mate, speaking super open. There's not holding anything back, with the hope that those other men feel that they've got the courage to do it as well.
That's very succinct, Mike. When we were chatting just before we hit record, I was talking about going back to New Zealand for the NZSA's 70th birthday. And what got me, because we are in a different chapter of our life. You talked about the next 45 years, which I loved. You're looking at 85 as a minimum. So which chapter of our life are we in? I was meeting the old and bold SAS. I managed to meet one of the originals from 1955, which was amazing. But I was meeting these old and bold, big, gruff guys that I had heard about in the 80s and 90s. Think for the UK, McAleese and I was lucky enough to have Rusty Furman on the show, but the old and bold, right? But what they weren't, Mike, was beating their chests and gruff and so on. They were open, but they were still masculine. They were very much men. And if something went down, they'd be on their game. But it wasn't a bunch of bravado. And that's, I think, males that haven't had that self-reflection might hide behind that. And that does them, it's to their detriment, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more. I think, like I said, the greatest courage a man can have is to be his true self and to be authentic and to show how he really feels and maybe to show how much he loves. I think there's again, we go back to that point about the archetypal masculine figure of being this protector provider. That is true and that is good. And we want men to do that. Absolutely. We want men to do that. But we also want men to be great fathers and to be amazing husbands and partners and to love hard and to fight hard as well. That is part of being a man. And I think we struggle to sometimes express ourselves in that way. And I think if UNIFY can do anything, it's about giving men the space to be the true authentic selves.
You're absolutely right. I love the show reel you've got on the website on UNIFY Men, and it's got people like former guest Anthony Staziker, upcoming guest Jason Fox, and we'll talk about that just maybe because listeners have had some exposure to him. But really well done with that reel, and it just shows that community and what real manliness means, because it's not this toxic masculinity. That's an interesting word. I actually think it's a true term because there sure as heck is toxic males, but they're not men, in my opinion. Let's talk about Foxy as an example. I've read his books. We've seen him on TV. He was very open about him getting into such a dark, depressed place that he literally had blackouts. He ended up on the side of a cliff, ready to end it there. And it was amazing that he was able to speak to that. But on the other side, he's a happy guy. He's showing what you can do from that post-traumatic growth, I'd suggest. And he's a poster child publicly for it. But it's not just him. There's so much more going on with what you guys are doing. There's all these people like yourself that's done this BJJ community and public speaking. So it's not just him as an outlier. It's a whole bunch of us doing it, isn't it?
It is. And I think what you find, mate, is when you project your real self into the world, you attract real people back. Yourself, Foxy, Stars, all these guys, they're just real dudes. There's no front here. They're not trying to be anyone else. They're not trying to be someone. Brenny Brown talks about these masks that we wear, and I often talk about that when I talk about authenticity. Guys are wandering around. It's the classic coping mechanism of a man, right? You stand in the bar, you've had a shit week, you haven't slept with your wife for 6 months, you've got no testosterone left, and your mate says, "How are you?" You go, "Great, mate. Yeah, really good." Did you chug a pint down and pretend it's all fine? Real men don't do that. Real men say, "Do you know what, mate? I feel like fucking shit. And can we ever talk about it? How are you, by the way?" And Foxy, Stars, you, me, we're just real dudes. And I think when you do that, you attract real people back, man. It's a mirror to who you really are.
Gosh, that really hit home for me just now. I won't mention the background, and because I do not want to identify the guy in any way, shape, or form. But someone over there in the UK just mentioned me a couple of days ago. His wife left him after a 30-year marriage, and he was a high-end operator, and everything going for him and things. And like you said, testosterone's gone. He's having a shit week, but he's going to have a shit time for a while. But he reached out, and he's a brave man, because to reach out as a man and not just do what you said, Mike, is, yep, everything's great. That takes a big set of balls. And this is not for you, Mike, you're preaching to the choir, but for listeners and viewers, if you're a man and another man has just said, "Oh, g'day, mate," and you haven't heard from them in a while, that may be their way of reaching out. They're not like females that say, "Oh, I want to have a talk, and this is going terribly." We say it in a different way. If a man's reaching out to you, men, please investigate a little bit more. I'm good. That's not the answer we want to hear. So you're so right there, Mike. I'd like to ask you, what does someone that comes along get out of UNIFY Men? Because we said what it's about. We said our background in generic terms, and you painted a hell of a picture. Probably so did I. What does someone get out of UNIFY Men? What do they walk away from after these experiences? Because they look amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so we put on a flagship event every September in a beautiful part of Wales, this 13th century castle where we do these struggle sessions together. You know, you and I understand that when you have shared adversity, when you struggle alongside someone else, you create really strong bonds. So we do that in the morning really early every day. And we have an amazing set of speakers. We have food cooked over fire. It's all connected to nature, right? I think what people get depends on what they're looking for. As an example, we had a guy come to our event last year. And last year, a lot of our speakers, we curated around sleep because we know sleep is the foundation of health, right? And so we wanted to make sure men could sleep well. And so we had these amazing speakers like Phil Lerney, who owns Human 24, this amazing brand around circadian rhythm. And this guy messaged me and said, you know what, Mike, I'm coming to an event this year. I've never met you. I've never met this guy in my life. He said, I've seen you've got Phil Lerney speaking, some other sleep speakers. He said, I've not slept a full night's sleep in 3 years.
God.
My doctor said, if I don't start sleeping, I'm going to die early. He said, I'm desperate. So he comes to our event. He gets some information. He perhaps learns something about sleep he didn't truly understand. But more importantly than that, he connected to guys who were going through the same kind of issues. And he could speak to them over dinner and say, man, you're not sleeping as well. This is normal. Mate, he messaged me a week after the event. He said, you're not going to believe this, man. I had my first full night's sleep in 3.5 years.
Wow.
That is the difference we make at UNIFY sometimes. But it depends. Some guys come for a break. Some guys come to discover who they really are. We get guys in tears. We get guys laughing. It all depends on the individual, mate. But it's an open space, right? That's the thing. It's an open space for you to find the thing you're searching for. Whatever it is, you'll find it at one of our events for sure, man.
Amazing. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not sure the listeners quite picked up, but I've got some notes already. You mentioned connected to nature. I was lucky enough to become friends with and have on as a guest Nick Goldsmith. Not sure if you heard of him. He's over there in the UK.
Oh, yeah. I know Nick.
Yeah, beautiful book he's written called Rewild Your Mind. And he uses the same thing for himself, for his own health, get back to nature. So you said connected to nature. Why is that important for people? Is it airy-fairy or do we need to go do it?
Oh, we absolutely need to do it. I think it's something fundamental to our being that calls us back to nature. I think more and more, I mean, we're sat doing this over technology, which is wonderful. We can speak to people at the other side of the world, but we are hyper-connected these days in a way which I don't think is really healthy. And we've got to find a balance for that. And so at our father's event that we did a test for only a few weeks ago, one of the things we asked the dads to do when they arrived was to surrender their technology. So they put their phones in a Yeti cool box. I call it putting their tech on ice. And they did it, most important, in front of their children. And it was an act, it was a symbolic act of, I'm now present with you. And you've got my full attention for the next 24 hours. So that's one thing. So it's getting them off the phones. We have a booze-free event. There's no booze and there's no bullshit. But I think the connected to nature things is very important. We do, cold water immersion. We have struggle sessions outside in the mud. When you were kids, that's what you did. And you loved it. And it felt good to have the grass beneath your feet, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've forgotten, men, busy men, professional men, we've forgotten what that feels like. And I think to get back there, pretty important. I mean, I'm sure we'll come into this in a little while, but, I spent 46 days alone at sea. And that is a true connection to nature, right? You are actually part of nature when you do that. And there's something primeval about it, but beautiful about it at the same time. It's raw and it's wonderful.
A former guest, I agree. The statement I'm going to make is in concurrence with you. A former guest on the show, New Zealand SAS operator Greg Pup Johnson, he has a quote, nature doesn't lie. And what he meant by that is, you take someone out, we know this, you take someone out, get them wet, tired, cold and hungry, and the true self comes out. You sure as hell know what you're made of. And You're exactly right. That true connection to nature is important. It was a loaded question. It makes me think back to my basic training in the military. Your basic training, listeners and viewers, you just taught how to live outside and how not to die. How to put up this shelter, how to sleep in your sleep bag, how to zip the thing up, how to not get hypothermia. All these things is how not to die. I didn't see a weapon for a long. I might have had to carry the damn thing, but I didn't see a bullet for a long time. And it brought you back to nature and brought you back to what was really important: a hot meal, a nice warm sleeping bag, and seeing that daylight and the night come and go. And it's simple, isn't it?
It's simple, and we've forgotten how to appreciate it. Again, spending 46 days, 6 hours and 10 minutes on a rowing boat, where when you sit down on a toilet for the first time after that, or when you lay down in a warm flat bed that's not moving around all the time, you
Wow.
appreciate that, man. When you have that cold drink that you haven't had for 6 weeks, you appreciate it. And I think we've forgotten how to appreciate the simple things in life. That's the other thing I think about nature. It's very simple. It doesn't cost you anything to walk outside. It doesn't cost you anything to take off that rain jacket and feel the rain on your skin. That's a feeling that we should enjoy and love and not hide from. And it's very, very special. We've got to get out into nature more, for sure.
You talked about sleep, Mike, and I've been lucky enough to have Dr. Kirk Parsley as a friend and many time guest on the show. He's a Navy SEAL, moved on to become a doctor, went back to Warcom, which is a huge thing in the States, apparently. I don't know how that works, but he's a top doctor. And sleep is what fixed the testosterone of all these guys, that fixed the psychology of all these guys. And you spoke about that guy who hadn't slept for 3 years. It's super important. It's something we lack so much. Yeah, you've had some great experts there. Can you just elaborate on that side of things for the listeners from your point of view on sleep and what it does for the human body, or even the lack of it?
Yeah, exactly, mate. I've had personal experience with this, obviously operating like you have, sleep deprived state. But obviously, the most severe sleep deprivation I've experienced is rowing that ocean solo, where I was rowing 14 to 17 hours a day. I was maybe getting I would try to get 4.5 hours in a block of sleep to maximize REM sleep, of course, because REM accumulates throughout the phases of sleep, those 90-minute blocks. So I tried to get 3 sleep cycles back to back, but it was broken and it was light sleep. And I was severely sleep deprived. And let me tell you, when you are sleep deprived to that degree, you start to lose your mind.
Yeah.
I was hallucinating. I was talking to random things. I was seeing things that didn't exist. I was making poor decisions. It became almost like an instant survival kind of feeling, right? Very tunnel vision, very emotional, and yeah, basically going mad. I mean, to the point now where I prioritize sleep above everything else. I wear Whoop. I only wear Whoop to look at my sleep. I don't drink anymore. I make sure I get sleep consistency. I get good sleep hygiene, and it's the thing I prioritize more than anything else. Because as we hit midlife, things become more difficult, right? As testosterone spoke about that, maybe you get a little bit less mobile. But if you're sleeping well, you're giving yourself half a chance, man. And so, yeah, it's the thing I prioritize more than anything. It is the most important thing, I think.
It really is. Before I went on to the how not to die guy stuff, for years I coached people in sleep, stress, and human nutrition. And the sleep was actually one of the biggest parts of that. Maybe the stress, the nutrition was a piece of cake. Eat this, don't eat this, crack on. And then you've been a good boy or girl and then work on it. But the sleep side of things was just it. Because I like to say the term biology creates psychology. Meaning, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, if you're doing all those wrong things, then you're going to have a psychological difference. You could be depressed, you could be stressed, you could be wired and tired. But biology runs first before psychology. And if we want to prove that point and get a female on her 4 different types in a menstrual cycle, the biology is changing that when her testosterone's high, when her estrogen's high, when her progesterone's low, all those different types. It goes through those natural waves, and it's influencing the psychology. She's a slightly different person through those.
Mate, I've lost you, mate. The connection's really bad. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's at your end, but
I've got you
really
there now.
struggling to hear you now.
I've got you there now. Are we back on the same timeline?
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm still here. Still here, Mike.
Hi, mate.
There we go.
Yeah, I
Okay,
lost you there, mate.
we're back on the same timeline. Okay, so I like to coin the term, or say the term, biology creates psychology. You know, if you're not sleeping right, you're going to be so fatigued, you could be depressed, and your testosterone is down. Your testosterone is going to cause you to be depressed and have low energy, and then we're not going to be motivated. You know, look at a female in a menstrual cycle; she's a different female through those 4 cycles in the month, and it's influencing her psychology. So sleep really is, as you say, the key to that wellness.
It's the foundation stone, isn't it? I think before you do anything else, before you look at even what you eat, or what you drink, what you put in your body, you know, there's a reason we've evolved for millennia, but yet we still need a third of our day of sleep. If we didn't need it, we'd have evolved not to need it, because when we sleep, we're at our most vulnerable, right? You know, we can't see predators arriving. You know, we're unconscious. So, you know, if we've evolved to still need a third of our day of sleep, that's telling you something. Prioritize that first. I love that, biology before psychology. Get your sleep right, then do what you need to do during the day right, and then you'll live right. That is for sure.
Absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it there. That's sort of covered off UNIFY Men, and we do have the narrated show notes at the start with the links, but just now, where's the best place to go for people to find out more if they're interested in UNIFY?
Yes, head to unifymen.com, mate. That's the best place to go. You can find us on Instagram as well, UNIFY Men, but yeah, head to our website. You'll find everything you need to there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's dive into you a bit more, Mike. I mean, you've done some amazing things. You know, you said you're running that BJJ dojo, which is phenomenal. What a community! And I love BJJ. I take the Mickey a little bit now and then, but I love BJJ for what it does for people, especially my boys. My 9-year-old's better than I am. But you know, the rowing challenge you got there. Just talk to us about that. When was it? Why the hell did you choose to do that? Because you clearly put yourself under a lot of duress. And let's find out more about that challenge, and then we'll push on.
Yeah, mate. So, well, both my boys I've got 2 teenage sons. Both were born early. My eldest boy was 5 weeks premature. We had to feed him through a tube for about a week, but he was in hospital for about a week, but he came home pretty soon.
Yeah.
My youngest boy was born 10 weeks early. He was 3 pound. He was see-through, couldn't breathe for himself. We was in and out of intensive care for about 6 weeks. And then we got him home, and he was a tiny baby, but, you know, he was doing all right. He was sleeping a lot, which I thought was good, right? Talks about sleep.
Mm.
But my wife, as all women have, has got an amazing mother's instinct. And she just said, Mike, there's something not right about this kid.
Mm-hmm.
So we took him back to the hospital, and the consultant sat us down and said, you know, if you hadn't brought him in today, he'd have been dead tomorrow. He had meningitis.
Oh, God.
So we're back into intensive care again for 6 weeks. This 6-week-old tiny baby, meningitis, really poorly. We lost him, we got him back. Thankfully, he survived, only because of the care and the facilities at the hospital in Leeds, where I live in England. And so I kind of locked it up. I looked after everyone else, as the guy does, right? I locked up this trauma of seeing my baby son fight for his life, and I didn't deal with it. And every year on his birthday, I'd give him his presents, and I'd just have to go off on my own, and I'd become uncontrollably upset. This wave of emotion, of grief and guilt and gratitude would kind of pour out on me, right? And I did this for 10 fucking years. And I got to 10 years in, I was like, I'm going to have to deal with this. And I felt what I needed to do was to pay back this debt of gratitude that I felt I owed the hospital for saving my little boy.
Yeah.
But it was lockdown, right? No one had money. So I was like, I need to do something big. I need to do something crazy that people are going to put their hand in their pocket and support me on. And so I discovered ocean rowing. And I thought, I'm going to row on my own from the Canary Islands to Antigua, 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. Everyone thought it was crazy. No one thought I'd do it. I had the ambition to raise £70,000, $140,000 US dollars, American dollars, whatever. And we ended up raising £137,000. I won the race by a week, became the fastest British person in history to do that race. and, gave a lot of money to that hospital, and it kind of squared that circle for me, and it made me feel good about being able to give back to the people that saved my son. So that was why I did it. It was brutal, way harder than I thought it would be mentally. I trained like my life literally depended on it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it was still a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but we did it.
Wow. Congratulations. I'm sure most people don't say that to you. They probably say, why did you do it? You said something there about, the 10 years. And so it's obviously his 10th birthday, your boy. What was the trigger? And it's just for me, I'm super intrigued. What was the trigger? Was it the fact that he was 10 years old and very cognizant of dad and what he's going through here? What was the trigger that said, I need to deal with this? That was your words.
Yeah, no, it was more about like just caring for myself, man. It was more about, again, going back to what we said at the very beginning, it was about me being courageous enough to face into the fact that I wasn't dealing with it very well.
Yeah.
And so I had to hold a mirror to myself, and I was like, man, why are you locking this up? Why don't you just talk to people about how you feel? Why don't you do something that's going to deal with this trauma rather than keeping it suppressed? So it was me living my values, mate. If I'm anything, I like to think I'm authentic, and I live the values I believe in. And one of them is to be authentic. And so I was feeling like shit. And I thought, you got to fix yourself before you can start fixing anybody else, mate. So that's why I went and did it.
Brilliant. Gosh, that's a bit to go through. I can not empathize, I can correlate with you a little bit. My boy, when he was 2 years old, at his birthday party, long story short, put his face through a plate glass window. And I didn't see it occur. I just got presented with the kid with blood streaming down his face. I was like, what's going on? But when I think back to that, and I've talked about it with lots of people, because talking, as again, preaching to the choir, Mike, helps change it from trauma to a filed memory. But gosh, every time I started to talk about it, it was so traumatic. Nothing on you, but talking to people makes a difference, listeners. If you're that guy, don't be like Mike was for 10 years. It works, doesn't it?
It does work. I've a similar story with my eldest boy. I'll tell you this real quick. I was posted to Canada. I worked with the Canadians for a little while, and we were in a quarry near Quebec. And there was a scuba diving school there, but a fucking deep quarry. It had the fifth highest bungee jump in the world. And I did the bungee jump, and then we went swimming. And my eldest boy at the time, who was only about 3 years old, wanted to go swimming. And he jumped off of a pontoon and just disappeared under the water. And man, I was like, fuck. So I dived underneath, and I could see him going down. And it was like one chance to grab his arm. And he had his arm up looking at me. And I literally grabbed his arm and pulled him out, mate. And that, mate, I've literally got, look at my hairs on my arm.
Yeah.
And literally goosebumps straight away every time I tell that story. But to your point, I didn't talk about that because I almost felt embarrassed about the fact I put him in jeopardy or whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to say it because it's trauma you're carrying around. You have to tell people about it. And every time I tell it, like I've just told it now, goosebumps, but then I feel better, a little bit better.
Yeah. That is the ultimate soundbite, because it's true. It's just a little bit. It's just a little chip away at that trauma and putting it back into, hey, because he's fine now, right? And it did work out. That's the fact. It didn't happen. He didn't go away. I'm sure that picture's like burned into your brain of his arm, but you got him. Yeah. That should be the better picture, is your hand on that and you winning, and that's from my point of view. But I can definitely see from your perspective, you've got the one where what if didn't happen?
You're so right, man. But to your point, I totally agree. I think every time you talk about how you feel, it goes right back to the beginning of our conversation. And men aren't very good at this. But if we get better at just talking about how we feel better. And the person we've spoken to gets permission to tell us how they feel. It's this circular thing. And so we're all helping each other. So for guys out there who are thinking, I don't really want to share my story, every time you do, you help someone to have the courage to tell theirs. It's an act of service again. So, yeah, let's go out there and talk more, fellas.
That's awesome the way you said it, because the way you said it at the start, tell people how you feel. No. That's not working for me. But I'll share a story, and you show me how you felt. You literally showed me the autonomic response on your body, and you explained it. let's tell those stories, because women tell each other how they feel. We do it by stories, and it's by default sharing how we feel, and it carries on. So, let's share those war stories or tough stories or whatever you want to go through. But that's where it starts.
Love that. Absolutely right.
Gosh, you've done a few things, my friend. I'm intrigued, and you're clearly incredibly educated with the health side of things, and obviously by necessity. Let's just talk about the BJJ, because I didn't realize that was something that you were doing. Black belt is a huge achievement, especially in that game. It's a phenomenal game. Did you start that in the military, and how did you go on to becoming a black belt and running those things?
Mate, I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 25 years, for a lot longer than people even knew it really existed. So, yeah, in 2001, the 9/11 attacks, I was a young Royal Marine. I was in 4-5 Commando in the UK. We were spearhead for the British Armed Forces. And we got the call to go to Afghanistan to find bin Laden, right? Americans had lost him, send the commandos out there to find him, and into the Tora Bora region, the high mountains, where bin Laden had his cave system. So we were like, listen, we better fight with our bare, we'd better know how to fight with our bare hands, because we're in the caves with these guys, right?
Yeah.
So we started grappling, and we getting old UFC tapes, and we were looking at them. Because, of course, in early 2001, there was no jiu-jitsu in the UK. There was one guy, Roger Gracie's dad, Mauricio Gomez. That was it.
Wow.
And no one even knew where he was. It was like this enigma, right? And if you saw a blue belt in jiu-jitsu back then, they were like a god, right? There were none of them. I've got 100 blue belts of my own just around the corner here right now. So we started grappling in the Marines, just together, training, getting ready to fight. And it was just something that I loved. And I think at the time I didn't realize it. Now I know, with 25 years experience, been a black belt for 9 years, owned one of the biggest schools in the world, 600 students.
Wow.
Phenomenal. The thing that's magical about jiu-jitsu is it's very tactile. We are hugging each other now. We are close. We are touching. And that touch is a primeval thing that we need. Human beings need this. And again, gents aren't very good at this. We should hug more, right? So jiu-jitsu gets us close to people. It makes us tactile. And it builds the strongest of bonds. Because having done the work you've done, similar for me, when you put someone in a situation of duress, you talked about the weather doing that before, right?
Yes.
When you're on the mat and you're getting hammered and beaten up, I'm going to see the real you.
Yeah.
How cooperative are you? Do you lose well? Do you lose bad? Are you a good loser? Can you share? Can you, all these things, we start to see the real character. So I always say the mat is a mirror, and it shows you the real person. And so on many levels, jiu-jitsu captivates people. And it's not a surprise to me, 25 years on, that it's now become the vogue sport that it is, and it's taking over the world. And I think it's only just getting started, to be honest.
I agree. I love that what you said. And you said it from a grown-up's point of view. My boy was at jiu-jitsu at 5, 6, and 7 years old. And what I loved about that was it taught him exactly what you said, but not undoing the things, not showing a mirror of what you become at whatever age. And a confrontation was just another thing. Losing was just another thing. Winning was just another thing. They weren't jumping up and down. They weren't crying their eyes out. And the instructor, which is amazing, and I'll shout out to him here, Adam Metcalf here in Perth in Australia, he's a dad. So he would know when to put an arm around them. He would know when to give them a kick up the bum, and he'd know when to hand them back to mum or dad. It was a great learning tool for a child. I was going to say a boy turning into a man, but the girls and boys are also at that level. They're absolutely equal. So a child learning to be an adult, and I love what it shows. And now I see, up until this show today with you, now I see why people are so loyal to the BJJ or jiu-jitsu, because they're getting that literal closeness and connection and even probably the oxytocin from all that rolling around.
Yeah, and also a huge amount of trust. If you allow, you would never allow a stranger to get that close to you, right? No. Like, it would be weird if a guy in the street, a woman can come and literally put their face next to yours and breathe in your face. You'd be like, get away. In jiu-jitsu, that's normal, and you do that on day one with strangers, right? You put people between your legs. It's the closed guard, right? For a woman To wrap her legs around a stranger, like a guy, unheard of.
Yeah.
So when you do that, what you're really saying is, I'm trusting you. I'm giving up some control and I'm trusting that you will act in a way that is right in this moment. And when I tap, you're going to let go. I trust you on that straight away. So it builds real strong bonds, right? And that's why people love it so much, because we're giving up control to someone else for a moment. On the kid thing, like we have our own, I mean, we've got 400 kids here, right? Like we've got our own value-based curriculum. So these kids aren't just learning jiu-jitsu and self-defense. They're learning how to be leaders. They're learning discipline. They're learning how to be part of a community, what part they need to play. Humility is one of our main values. Inclusivity, how to include everybody else. These are all values and behaviors that if you take them into adulthood, you're going to be a phenomenal person, man. And we always talk about that. We're creating the next generation of amazing people. We're not teaching jiu-jitsu. We're creating the next generation of amazing people. I think there's nothing like jiu-jitsu. Rugby gets close, but jiu-jitsu is the best at doing that, for sure.
That's so interesting you mentioned rugby. And I say, look, I live in Australia. I'm a Kiwi living in Australia. So they've got AFL over here. And, rugby is a gentleman's sport. It's a real man's sport. I say man, again, not a male. It's a man's sport. And even the kids, you learn respect. You don't talk back to the ref. You learn to cheer the other side on and a bunch of different things. And you're right about rugby being pretty close. And that was what was great about jiu-jitsu. Got my boy great for rugby. And the tackling was a normal thing, just another thing you do. I am intrigued. And thank you for explaining what you do with the school and the philosophy around BJJ. I'm just intrigued the unarmed combat that was taught to the commandos in World War II by Fairbairn, Sykes, and everybody else. You said that in 2001 you had to go and learn unarmed combat or hand-to-hand combat and relearn it from watching UFC tapes. Did that get lost in the British military? Because it was very, very good back then. The same way to kill a guy back then is exactly the same way to do it now. It hasn't changed. Nancy Wake doing Nazis with her bare hands. What happened just in the military that you had to go and learn this yourself?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm not sure it's lost. I just think grappling itself has developed. I mean, the UFC has developed it, and when the Gracies brought jiu-jitsu to the world in 1993, when they started the UFC to showcase Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we've seen even from then. If you put a UFC fight from 1993, like Royce Gracie, all those guys against Khabib today, they won't stand a chance.
No,
they wouldn't stand a chance. So the development of fighting has changed and has evolved. And I think perhaps the military and the police, and certainly in my old world, the intelligence world, they haven't kept pace with it. When you're doing it every day, it's evolving in front of your eyes. You're becoming a much more skilled fighter all the time. So I think it's not that it's been lost. I just think fighting has evolved way beyond what the military and the police and law enforcement have kept up with.
Yeah, I remember back to the police training. I was a police officer for a couple of years here, and what they taught us there with their empty hand techniques was very interesting to come from a special forces background and see what they were showing. But America is a classic case. There's so many jiu-jitsu schools, a couple I've interviewed, that teach the police, which is great, but it should be compulsory because they just don't know what they're doing. And these are the people that are most likely to get into a grapple or a life and death situation emanating from that. I saw a video someone sent me today, a grapple situation, 2 cops on a guy, and the guy ended up having a gun underneath them because they didn't control his hands. He could let it off. So pretty crazy situation. They need to be trained in something as skilled as BJJ. And it doesn't take a lot to learn that skill at a level they can use, does it?
No, all fighting is the clinch, right? No one's standing there duking it out at range, throwing punches. Not in law enforcement anyway. You shouldn't be inflicting damage on anyone. You should be, nullifying the threat. And jiu-jitsu translates, of course, as the gentle art in Japanese. The beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu to me is you can put someone to sleep very gently. There's no damage going on here. You're just stopping the blood for a little bit. You can put someone to sleep, you can nullify the threat, wake them back up, and there's no damage. If you only know boxing, you're punching someone's face in until they pass out. So I think anyone doing law enforcement, any military guy, needs to know how to fight off your back, which jiu-jitsu gives you. It's the only martial art that means you're effective on your back. Because maybe you get pushed over, maybe you slip over, you've got to be able to find your back. And also how to nullify a threat without violence. That's the thing I try and teach all of my students.
Yeah, very clever. I love it for the kids, for the anti-bullying. And I say anti because it can prevent it. And then if it does go physical, it's not, you haven't got the 10-year-old on a playground stoving someone else's head, and it doesn't look anything like that. It's completely different. And again, the physical confrontation isn't so scary, like probably you and mine first fights when we were kids was scary as hell. These little kids have been through hundreds of them already, and it's just another thing, right?
Yeah, I think you're still going to get nervous if you end up in an altercation with someone. Anyone who believes you're not going to get that fear response, I think, is lying. I think even with our experience, you're going to get that adrenaline. It's going to happen. It's a natural thing. I think what jiu-jitsu does is it desensitizes you to that threat.
Yeah.
And also it gives you a confidence where you can walk just that quarter of an inch taller, right? And sometimes that is the difference between ending up in an altercation or not. If you've got that little bit of self-confidence, you're like, okay, if this goes down, I might be okay. They're going to go and pick on someone else. And I think for kids as well, I talk about self-defense with kids. The best weapon they've got is their voice. If they can just tell someone, no, this is not cool, back off, stay away. Often that's enough for that bully to go and find someone else.
Exactly. It's interesting, self-defense for females versus males. I was thinking about that when you were saying those things. A male on male is completely different than male on female, an ambush situation. They're completely different things. And one of the things I often say is ego will get you killed. And the jiu-jitsu takes that ego away. It teaches you to be, you said the word humility is something you preach in there, which is great. But yeah, a male on male thing. God, if you got in a fight, sometimes you can't get away from bad guys. Bad violence just does happen if they're crashing through your door or whatever is happening. But so often you can get away from that. And I'm sure you've trained in that in your military career as well, as trying to avoid that situation happening before you get into it.
100%. I mean, it's all situational awareness, right? We do this a lot with the work I did, a lot of it on the street, unarmed, it's working undercover or whatever, covert stuff. You have to be aware of your situation. I love that phrase, the ego will get you killed. I've got one for you. Yes. I always think about this, that the hardest fight you'll ever be in is the one you walk away from, because you will be killing yourself thinking, I could have done something there. I could have probably beaten, but you've walked away. And the male ego will eat you up for that. That's the hardest fight, but it's the right thing to do. You should walk away from every fight, but it's the hardest fight you'll ever have.
That's so hard to eat, isn't it? Because we've seen the TV shows, we've seen the A-Team and everything we grew up on. That would be the hardest thing to do. But then the other quote to throw back here is the best fight you've ever been in is the one you were never in.
Correct.
And that's
correct. We should be avoiding this stuff. It's not, it's the last resort. I've only ever had to use jiu-jitsu once in my post-military career. I've only had to use it once, and that was to take some car keys off a guy that was driving drunk. And he wouldn't give me them, and I just lost him, got his keys. And what was interesting was the thing we become so familiar with in jiu-jitsu is feeling the pressure of the human being on top of us. When I put a little bit of pressure on this guy, not a lot, just a little bit, the look in his eyes, man, he thought he was about to die. It was pure fear. He couldn't understand how this pressure could feel like that. And it's the thing we just get used to with jiu-jitsu every single. It's such a powerful tool, man. When you know how to fight, you know how to do jiu-jitsu, you're a safe person for sure.
It's interesting that quote you said. The toughest fight the hardest fight you ever been is the one you walked away from. I was just thinking again, males versus females. A female, that wouldn't come into a brain. So we co-raised my boy. I had him at home when I'm not a fireman 4 days a week. I'd be walking along with a pram. I don't want to be in a fight when I've got a baby in a pram. That's the last thing I want to do. I'll be on the other side of the road. I do not want to be there. It's insane. But definitely the female is not going to want to be anywhere near that fight. It would be so easy for them to walk away from. So easy for me to walk away from with the bub. But when you're by yourself, there's this... Ego's a funny thing, isn't it, Mike?
It is, but you've got to let it go, man. You've got to let it go. You're going to surrender to it. And again, it takes great courage to do that, to give up control. against something that men aren't very good at, but giving up control a little bit and allowing other people to have that moment. Say, okay, you won this one, mate. I'm going to go home to see my wife and kids today.
You know, one thing I've been training someone, a close friend of mine and myself on that exact thing, and this may be helpful for someone out there, I hope it is road rage. You're in your little box, your car, that is surrounded by metal and glass and goes whatever speeds it goes. You're in your environment. Whatever anybody else is doing inside their car is irrelevant. It matters where the car's turning. It matters if it's going to crash into you. But their gestures don't mean a damn thing. So I quickly glance to see if they're getting out of their vehicle, but I don't bother looking at their gestures anymore. And it's really quite refreshing, quite freeing, Mike. And we can sort of correlate that to getting rid of the ego and walk away from that fight. But doesn't it make sense that what they're doing inside their car, gesture-wise, angry, yelling at you, whatever, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it matters where their car is, not the noise they're making.
Yeah, and the best thing you can do is smile at them, right? My granddad used to tell me, you can't be angry or in an argument with someone who's smiling at you. So just smile and drive off. But I'll tell you a story. So, you know, as like most men, you know, I'm not perfect and I'm a work in progress. And certainly as a younger man, road rage was something that I used to get wrapped up in quite a lot. And I think it is the lack of control of other people's actions. And there was one time I got cut up by somebody and he came in front of me real quick and I was right behind him, flashing my lights, blah, blah, blah. And this guy's giving all the gestures and I'm chasing him down the road, right? Anyway, but he pulls over and I'm pulling behind him. And this fucking giant gets out of the car. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, what am I doing? So it's a true story. It's a true story. So I'm like, you got to get out. Listen, you've caused this. You got to get out. Face your demons. So I get out and I walk over to this guy and he's towering above me, this huge guy, and he's giving it this. But something interesting happened, right? Maybe it was the jiu-jitsu, the 20 years of jiu-jitsu at this point, whatever it was. But I felt fairly calm. And he had this massive adrenaline spike. And as he was talking, his lip quivered.
Oh,
just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And I saw it and I looked at his lip. And I looked him back in the eyes and he knew I'd seen it. And he de-escalated the situation so quickly because he realized the power balance here. His adrenaline was here and I'm here. And even though he was a bigger man, he felt unconfident in that situation there. I'd seen how fearful he was.
Yeah.
And he de-escalated it. So again, back to our point before, what we want to do is avoid the situation. It wasn't good I was there. But if you've just got that inner confidence, it's not an arrogance. It's just that little bit of self-assurance. It can often be the difference. He'd have probably beat me in the fight. He's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
But he de-escalated it because he was more feared than me.
Wow. That's a big, that bandwidth that you had, expanded bandwidth from being inoculated and exposed to pressure, which you've learned through jiu-jitsu, but also learned through your military career, allows us those sort of things, which is a great example of that. One thing I often do, gosh, we're going to do it just open chat, is I'll say, sorry, I don't mean it at all, but I'll throw it out there.
Yeah.
And it de-escalates it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, that was silly of me, whatever. Absolutely lying. I'm going by my Sergeant Major's sign on his door, be friendly, be polite, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet. But I'll say sorry, and immediately they just backtrack because what can you do when someone's saying sorry and they're smiling at you or whatever? There's no aggression. You're not going to mirror anything. It's a nice way to de-escalate it as well.
Spot on, mate. Spot on.
Look, interesting chat. Gosh, you've got a lot of things going on, and I'm sure we've literally only scratched the surface. We have got enough to push people towards getting something out of this. Looking at UNIFY Men, looking at BJJ, looking at what you went through, looking at what we've spoken about with just share a story, and then you'll start to open up in some way, and so liberating sharing those stories of what's happened. Joe, Mike, what are you doing now? I mean, you've got all those things you kicked off at the start, but you got UNIFY Men, you've rode in the most awesome challenge ever. What's life like for you now? What's your purpose?
Well, my purpose is the same as it's always been, and that is to serve others. And I do that, as I say, in different ways. So I have a number of businesses, but all those businesses are around creating communities for others to connect to and to find their true potential, unlock their true potential. I speak a lot to businesses and leaders around high performance, the art of leadership, and a lot of the lessons I explain there and the principles and the frameworks that I've developed of my own come from that 20-year covert career. So, I spent time in the Royal Marines. I also spent 15 years at the apex of the intelligence world as a covert operations leader within the Ministry of Defence and the intelligence and security fields of the UK. In the aftermath of the London bombings in 7/7, the most dangerous time, certainly in the UK, there's ever been, aside from the war. And so to operate on the streets there unarmed, undercover, running agents, whatever, it really teaches you a lot about leadership and how to get people to follow you more than anything else. And so I talk a lot about that. But ultimately, like I said, everything I do, man, it's all about trying to add value to others. It's about service. I'm in the process of trying to release a book. This is not something I can talk a lot about, but I want to mention it. It has been the most difficult 3 years with my former employer, who we're now in the courts with. So we'll leave that there. But what I will say is, if we get this through, and I believe we will, it will be a phenomenal story to tell. And you heard it here first.
That is awesome. It's funny, these conversations. I spoke with Staz, and it wasn't until I think right at the end of the show like this that I found out he actually had a book out. I hadn't known, and people got so much going on, and it was a great read. I'm interested in what you said there with your 15-year career, only as a point. Andrew Bustamante, I think, who I've mentioned before, he's really brought his CIA training into the mainstream. He's been on every show there is around it. He's really great at explaining it. Just generically, did you guys go through the same sort of human behavior? Because I don't think human behavior really changes. Study and practice that someone like he did?
Yeah, so I mean, that's what I would say I specialised in. I'm a human intelligence specialist. And a human intelligence, and anyone knows intelligence from human beings are from covert sources, or what we would say is CHIS, a covert human intelligence source, an individual who provides information on your behalf from within a terror organisation or cell. And the recruitment and the management of that individual requires of the handler amazing leadership, because you're trying to change someone's worldview to align with yours and to create this environment that they want to be part of your team and not the others, right? So there's a lot of psychology that goes on there. And I think that's what we can help business owners and people learn from. It's interesting you talk about your man there, Bustamante from the CIA, because America, of course, celebrates their former intelligence officers. They celebrate their former servicemen and women. In the UK, we're still quite Dickensian. I don't know what it's like over in Australia and New Zealand, but over here, there's this almost mafia-style omerta that no one can speak about anything in the past. And I don't think that's right in this day and age. I think provided you keep the secret, provided you protect the operational integrity and you don't throw an else under the bus, there's a lot we can learn from that world that can help people. And that's certainly the mission I'm on at the moment. But no one's done it before, mate, in the UK. So I'm hacking through a new path in the jungle, trying to find my way through. I've ended up in the courts.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe, and this, I don't want this to sound arrogant in any way, but I believe I'm at this position and I'm trying to do this because I've got what it takes to make it happen. I'm courageous enough to give it a go, and not many people would be. So I'm going to go all the way, mate. We're going to get this book out.
I'm really excited to watch that progress. And after watching some of Andrew's stuff, and then literally what you were saying there with the leadership and the public speaking you're doing, what people don't realize is that our skills, again, not the ones we can speak about, you can transpose them into the civilian environment. The classic cases, I'm transitioning out of the military, I have to go from being a soldier into a banker or whatever, say Foxy was doing in an office, and it's just not going to work. But hang on a sec, everything you said there about running an agent or a source, you'll use that for the positive for leadership in organizations, and they're actually real world skills. That's why I did the How Not to Die Guy stuff. The first thing I ever did was lock the damn door in your car, and you've immediately prevented carjacking. But those skills are great, and you're so right. They're not known in the Western world apart from America. New Zealand, Australia, you wouldn't even know who those guys are. But really clever that you're doing it, because it's going to help people so much more. I really love that. And I didn't know that at all about you, Mike. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, and I wish you all the best with it.
Thanks, mate. I mean, look, it's been a very. I won't speak about it in any detail yet, but I'll happily come back on the show if we get it done. I think there's a long way to go. I'm seeing, unfortunately, the dark and the bad side of our state and how it can turn on ex-former veterans when they don't get their own way. I'm seeing that now. But I'm happy to be the one to tread that path for others. I'm happy to be the one to suffer a little bit and to own the stress, because I think again, it goes back to the very first thing I said to you, man. When your North Star is serving others, when you're here to help people, you can take a little bit of pain. You can row across an ocean because you know it's going to help someone in the end of the day. And so I know I'm on the right path. I know we'll get a just result. It just will be difficult, but I'm here to see it through to the end.
I believe you are. I was going to say you got a big set of balls, but that's incorrect. You got a big shield there that I hope holds up for it, because politics, and that's really what you talked about in not directly, but politics is a tough game, and you're delving into that world now where people have got their own sort of fiefdoms. So I really wish you all the best. Where do people go to find out more about you? We talked at the start a lot on UNIFY Men, which is a stunning achievement that you've got going on there. And where do people find out more about what you do for your speaking? Where do they find out more about the jiu-jitsu schools? And of course, we've got the narrator show notes at the start that'll have all that as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, just head to mikebates.uk. Yeah, that's my website. You can find out about everything there. I'm just kicking off another charity campaign, a 4-year rowing campaign to do 4 oceans in 4 years for MND, to try and raise 57 million quid for people living with MND. I'm doing my first team of 4 of us doing halfway around Great Britain this summer on the 25th of July. So if you head to my socials as well, Mike Bates Official, Instagram, Mike Bates on LinkedIn, you can follow the journey and just get involved, man. And hopefully if I get over to Australia one day, I can come and join you for a beer somewhere.
Gosh, I'm trying to. I've written down September. I haven't got that many notes, but September is there. I want to come over for one of your events.
Do it, man. Hey, listen, you be my guest. If you can make it over in September, you and Sean, whatever, come and join us.
Oh, stunning! Thank you so much, Mike. As usual, it's amazing you to know someone on the show. It's an honor. You're the first guest I've interviewed since we had the 70th anniversary, and I was just saying to so many people that were coming up to me, I just am so honored and lucky to get to know people and often become friends on this. And it's an honor and a privilege to have you on the show and to share just a touch of your journey there. And thank you for what you've done so far.
Well, listen, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I do want to say this to you and to everyone who you will have met at that 70th anniversary, or anyone around the world who has served. Thank you for your service, because it is the greatest act of unselfishness. I don't think we look after our veterans well enough. I don't think we care enough for the people who serve and give their lives for our countries. Thank you for the sacrifice you made. And thank you to all your friends as well.
And to you, my friend, thank you very much. All right, we'll hit pause on that note. I think it's phenomenal to end on. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownotodieguy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situational awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.